Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're basically going to be detectives. We're on a mission to solve one of history's biggest mysteries. What's the secret recipe that takes a simple little settlement and turns it into a huge, complex civilization? We're going to piece together the clues, so let's jump right in and start the investigation.
So really, what's the secret sauce? Is it just about having massive temples and fancy palaces, or is there some deeper formula at work here? To figure this out, we're going to follow the trail left by one of the absolute giants of archaeology, a guy named V. Gordon Childe. He literally laid out a blueprint based on evidence, and we're going to walk through it step by step.
All right, first things first, any good investigation has to start by defining our terms. Our main clue is the word civilization itself, or as we say in Hindi, sabhyata. The word actually comes from Latin roots, civis and civitas, and they all circle back to one main idea: living in a city. And right there, that link between the city and civilization, that's our very first clue.
Now, you gotta understand, for an archaeologist, civilization isn't about being more cultured or better than somebody else. Nope. It's a technical term, like a specific classification. It describes a society that has developed cities, has different social classes, has people doing all sorts of specialized jobs, and a central government calling the shots. If you boil all that down, it really comes down to one powerful concept: organization.
Okay, this brings us to a really important point, and one that, trust me, pops up in exams all the time. What is the difference between culture, or sanskriti, and civilization, sabhyata? They sound kind of similar, but for our investigation, they mean totally different things. So let's get our magnifying glass out and get this crystal clear.
Let's make this super simple with an analogy. Think about it like this. Culture, or Sanskrit, is the brick. It's the shared way of life, the beliefs, the customs of any group, whether they're a small band of hunters or people living in a megacity. But civilization, sabhyata, that's the entire complex city that you build with those bricks, all organized in a very specific structured way. So culture is the building block, civilization is the whole organized building.
So, the big question is, how did we go from just having the bricks to building the entire city? Well, according to V. Gordon Childe, this wasn't some slow, gradual thing. He argued it was the result of two huge back-to-back revolutions that completely rewrote the human story. Let's check out exactly how this incredible chain reaction happened. It all kicked off with a chain reaction. First up was the Neolithic Revolution, or Navpasharan Kranti. This is the moment when humans basically stopped chasing their food and started growing it. And farming created something totally new and unbelievably powerful: a food surplus, or atishesh utpadan. For the first time ever, we had more food than we needed just to survive that day. This surplus, it was like having money in the bank. Society can now invest this extra food to support people who weren't farmers. And that investment is what fueled the second massive change, the urban revolution, or Shehri Kranti, the birth of cities themselves.
And this brings us right to the heart of our whole investigation. If the urban revolution is what created cities, what exactly makes a place a city? Childe didn't just guess. He created a 10-point checklist based on solid archaeological evidence. You can think of this as the secret recipe we've been looking for. And hey, for anybody preparing for exams, this part right here is pure gold. Pay attention. 10. That is the magic number. Childe identified 10 key ingredients. These are the telltale signs that an archaeologist looks for to know, aha, we found a city, and with it, the dawn of a civilization. You ready to see the recipe? Let's break it down.
Okay, so the first 5 ingredients, these basically create the physical and social foundation. It all starts with one simple thing: a whole lot of people packed together in settlements that are way bigger than anything that came before. But remember that food surplus? Well, now not everyone has to be a farmer. This frees people up to become full-time specialists. We're talking artisans, priests, officials, you name it. So how do you feed all these people? That surplus gets collected as taxes, which then flows upwards to a new ruling class. And what do they do with all that wealth? They build massive public buildings like temples and palaces, stamping their power right onto the landscape. See the pattern? It's a feedback loop that concentrates people, resources, and power all in one place.
All right, next up are the software upgrades that make this whole new urban machine run. I mean, how do you possibly manage all those taxes and all those goods? Well, you invent writing, a tool for administration. How do you manage your farmland and predict the seasons? You develop predictive sciences like math and astronomy. Art gets way more sophisticated, and it's often used as a kind of propaganda to make sure everyone knows who's in charge. And since no city has everything it needs, long-distance trade explodes to bring in raw materials. But the final one, this might be the biggest mind shift of all. Your identity is no longer just about your family or your tribe. It's about where you live, your city, your state. That is a completely revolutionary new way of belonging.
Now, in science and in history, no great idea ever goes unchallenged. Child's 10-point model was absolutely groundbreaking, but, as any good detective knows, the first theory isn't always the whole story. So, let's look at a little twist in the case.
So the main counterargument pretty much flips the script. Scholars like Jane Jacobs, for example, looked at evidence from other ancient places and suggested a totally different trigger. They argue that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't the food surplus from farming that came first. In some places, it looks like long-distance trade might have been the real engine. The need to organize trade routes in big marketplaces might have been the thing that pulled people together into cities in the first place, with large-scale farming only developing later on to support them. So what was the chicken and what was the egg? Agriculture or trade? The debate is still going on today.
So even with all these debates, Child's impact is just undeniable. And you might ask why? Because before him, most ideas about civilization were pretty philosophical. He was one of the very first to build a model based on actual stuff dug out of the ground, archaeological evidence. He completely shifted the field. He gave us the vocabulary we still use, terms like specialization, surplus, state formation. His work is the foundation that all modern studies of ancient cities are still built on.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. Take another look at that list of 10 ingredients: big populations, specialized jobs, writing, science, trade, all of it. Which single one of those do you think is the most essential for a city to actually succeed and thrive in our world right now? Is it the people, the economy, the knowledge, or the organization? Definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining this explainer. Keep learning and always stay curious.